We're going to take a look at the Snap Modify tab now, which is located under the LWCAD Extended tab. Before I load up any of these tools, I'm going to go ahead and just create a couple of simple things. I'm going to create a box, and then I also want to create just another box to the right of that. And we're going to go back to our LWCAD Extended tab and take a look at our different Snap Modify options. We have Move Snap, Drag Snap, and also a Rotate Snap and a Scale Snap. And all of these are directly linked to our Snap panel, so depending on what settings we have set in here, really depends on what it is we're going to be snapping to while we're using these specific tools. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is our Move Snap. And if I open up our Snap panel, we can see that we have near and end on. I'm also going to turn on point. And then I can just close that out. And we're going to turn on Move Snap. And now the first thing I want to do is define our linking point, or our linking selection. So in other words, what we're going to use as our main control for this tool. And then the next selection is going to be what it is that we're snapping to. So I'm going to go ahead and click. And now what I can do is snap to this end right here. And if I click again, we start to drag off, and we can see that we have a nice measurement. But when I start to bring it to our other object, you can see we can snap to the end, because that is mainly what we have in our snapping panel. And then, or we can snap to near. And a lot of it really depends on, like I said, what settings we have in the snapping panel. But it's a very quick and easy tool to use. It's a great way to join objects together, and you don't have to worry about there being any spaces. And this is definitely a huge improvement on the native Move tool within Lightwave. And you'll find that you use it quite a bit over the traditional Lightwave tool, because it does have so many different features to it, and it is so much simpler to modify items in this respect, where we can easily join them together. And you can see that that will actually come in handy quite often, and we'll see a couple more examples of that a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and undo that, just Control Z. And the next thing we're going to take a look at is our drag snap. And for this, I'm just going to deselect all of our objects just by clicking in a gray area. And we're going to turn on drag snap. Now you can see that all of our points now have blue circles around them, and they're all highlighted, which shows that they're all active, and they're all part of the drag snap tool. Now what I can do, and one of the really nice things is that this actually works in the perspective view as well as our other views. And you'll find that you're actually using this in the perspective view a little bit more, because it's a lot easier to see exactly where the points are at. But let's take a look. Let's say we wanted to join up these different points together. Now typically we'd have to select this point, and then we'd have to select the next point, and we'd have to weld them together. And that can be kind of time consuming. So this is a very quick and easy way to join things together. So all we got to do is just click on these points, and we can drag them to snap onto our other points, or whatever it is that we have set in our snapping panel. You can see that we also can snap to near. So now quickly and easily just sort of join these objects together, or modify them to match up with each other. Of course, we still have our polygons in the center, which would need to be deleted in this case. But it's a very cool tool, and it's great for editing, especially in the perspective view. You find it for tweaking and modifying different things, and just when you need that exact precision, you can have it now with the drag snap tool, which is quite cool. And I'm just going to go ahead and undo that again. And then our next tool is Rotate Snap. Now before I load that up, I'm just going to make a slight modification to our right box that we have. I'm just going to select our points, lasso them, hit T for move, and hold down Shift just to constrain. I'm going to move that off to the side just so that we have a slightly uneven object. And let's just go ahead and select the rotate snap now. Now the first thing we want to do is set our main pivot point. So I'm going to set our bottom over here. And the next thing we want to select is our control, or to the extent of what we want to be using as sort of a reference. In this case, we're going to be using a point, or this endpoint, to define where we're rotating. So now I've clicked twice and set up the 2 points. I can click a third time, and you can see we can rotate our object. You can also see that everything is being rotated right now, because if nothing is selected, everything is selected. And what I want to do is just go ahead and take this object that we have right here, our left box that we've created, and make it so it matches up along this line, or this angle that I've created on our second box. So the first thing I want to do is select our left box, select Move Snap, and I'm just going to snap to our bottom point, hit the spacebar to end the tool, and then we're going to select our Rotate Snap, select the same points as we did before, and now we can rotate this object off. And if I pull our extent off to that endpoint, you can see we can snap to that, and it'll be a perfect angle. We also get a nice measurement of our angle that shows up in the viewport to tell us exactly what angle we're moving to. And we can go ahead and snap to any number of these points, or the near, or like I said, we could also use the perspective snapping, or anything else that's available in the snap panel. Hit the spacebar, end that, and I can see we're joined up perfectly with these two objects. And if I zoom in, and let's just select these points, hit A on the keyboard, or Shift A, and zoom in as much as possible, and you can see we have that perfect line between our two objects. So we don't have to worry about there being any gaps when we're positioning objects in this manner. And our last option is the scale snap. Now let's say I wanted to take this current box that we have and extend it so it matched to the full length of our right box. Well, we can easily do this with the scale snap. I'm just going to select our box, our left box, and go to scale snap. Now we want to set up the same thing as we did before. In this case, I'm going to be selecting the bottom and then selecting the top. And if I click one more time, I can go ahead and just snap to the top of the object. You can also see that we have a couple more options in here. We have a 1D, 2D, and 3D. And what these options are for is which axes, or how many axes we're using to scale our object. Currently it's set to 1D. If I select 2D, you're going to see that on 2 dimensions our object is scaling, so not only on the y-axis, but also on the x-axis. If I change this to 3D, you can see that we now have the z-axis. If we take a look at the top view, we can see that change as well. And if we pull up the numeric options for this, you can see it's very basic, and we just have a factor, distance, and then our different modes. We can also select to show our factor and distance as well. We can see that factor showing up right there, 131%. And most of the time you won't really need to use the numeric options for this tool, mainly because it's a snapping tool. It's something that's extremely interactive, and something that, for the most part, you really only need to use your viewports for, and you really don't need to go in numerically. Although it is definitely something you can use as a tool, a numeric tool, if you want to be specific about what it is you're creating, especially if you've already created your snapping options and you kind of want to go beyond that. Because in this case, if I wanted to stretch this a little bit more upward, I could go back into our numeric panel and just adjust our factor. And you can see it stops at 100 while I'm sliding, or using the slider, but if I manually type in a value, let's type in 150, you can see we're going beyond that. So this is definitely a huge addition to have with Lightwave. And just the entire snap modify panel is probably something you want to set keyboard shortcuts to for each of these different tools because they are extremely helpful.